the bottom line is, do you really like the image? Are you proud of it?
Hey, Weekend Hunters, welcome back to the Art of Photography podcast. Now, today I have someone who's been not only an inspiration to myself, but also a lot of photographers out there. He is not only locally recognized, but he's recognized all around the world. He's been into multiple magazines, won multi awards, and most of all, he he inspired and he voiced his passion for photography to not only the new like photographers out there, but also photographers who's been shooting for a while. So I'd like to introduce to you Paul Zizka. Hey Paul, how you doing?
I'm very good, Stanley. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. It's great to be here.
No, I'm very excited to have a chat with you. I've been following you for a while now, and ever since I first follow you, you have that voice in photography and that passion in photography. I think you're definitely one of the most passionate person that in photography that speak your story and your voice through photography. So I am so excited to have you here. So yeah, look, for the listeners out there who haven't met you yet, give us a little bit of intro about who you are and what you're passionate about. Just a little bit of background about yourself.
For sure, Stanley. I'm a landscape adventure travel photographer based out of Banff, Alberta, in Canada. I will shoot pretty much anything outside. I'm passionate about the wilderness, the outdoors, and so I sort of I hop from one genre to the other within the outdoor realm. I've been doing photography for a living for probably, I don't know, 10 to 12 years now, something like that. Um, there's nothing else I'd rather do. You're right. I do love what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. There's some parts of it that I don't enjoy as much, and there's some days that are harder than others. Some days are better, but all in all, I have no regrets whatsoever in terms of following my passion of photography. And yeah, here I am. I've lived in Banff for 10 years or so now. I'm from Quebec City originally, so Eastern Canada. But I fell in love with the mountains a long time ago, and now I live here with my wife Megan, and we have two little girls as well.
That is amazing. I think that was a really important note that you say that. Although we all love the photography side of things, but when it comes to business, sometimes we gotta do the things that we don't like. And I think a lot of the time our listeners don't realize that through our social media and stuff, it looks like that it's just all fun and it's actually not true. We are all still human. So I'm so glad that you bring that out. Because yeah, that is very true. So what was the very how did you fall in love with photography? What was the first like spark? We all have that journey, but I'm really interested. What was the really first spark that make you basically here you are right now?
I would say, in a way, it's never really photography that I've been passionate about. I've always been passionate about exploring and being outside and seeing what's around the corner. And that's still what's most important to me when I go out there. That's still my goal, is to explore and allow myself to be curious more than it is about getting images that I like. If I get images that I like, then that's great. But I see it more or less as a bonus. It's not photography that drives my exploration. I guess it's the reverse, and it's always been that way. And so I started photography well after I started hiking, camping, climbing, getting into outdoor pursuits. And I think a lot of photographers follow the same trajectory, where they get into the outdoors and then they put themselves in situations where they witness so much beauty, so many great moments, that they feel compelled to document them for one, and then they feel compelled to bring that, offer that to everyone, bring that to everyone, be that link, that bridges those moments with people who may not be in a position where they can experience those places or moments. um, it's like when you see a phenomenon out there, a sunrise or the aurora, something that's extra special, you want to grab everybody by the hand and be like, you got to come check this place out, you got to come experience this. And photography is kind of a little bit like this for me. It's sort of, it first started with just witnessing and living really cool moments out there, and then wanting to make other people part experience those moments in one way or another. And I also discovered that photography could be a wonderful creative outlet. I'd never really explored creativity up until my 20s, when I discovered that photography could be a creative outlet, because I was my life was focused on other non-creative sort of goals leading up to that age. And so I never really explored art, for example, really, when I was younger. And then I think part of it too is I was never, like a lot of people, I wrongly assumed that because I hadn't explored creativity, that I didn't have it, that it wasn't within me. So I never really, considered exploring it. And gradually I just realized that photography could be more than just sort of snapping photos in passing. When you see something nice out there, you could actually commit some time and intention, and then do it with more purpose and more and more intention, and really engage a part of your brain that you never used to putting to work in the past. And that was a really cool discovery for me, and it became quickly addictive, that joy of sharing with others, and that joy of engaging my brain in a way that's not really that's different. Before it was more academic for me, and now at that point it became more more exploring more of the creative side of it, which was really exciting.
That's really interesting because for myself I was actually used to be creative. I love like art and like drawing and stuff like that. And when I got into engineering, it was kind of creative with problem solving, but at one point it was about procedures, about following things, and that creative things kind of gone away. And when you say that, it was actually, it just remind me like when I first like got into photography, it was very similar. Like it feels like I have the freedom to express myself to creativity anymore. Like it's just like it's back again. So what makes you really love this being in a creative world as to compare to the other side of it?
Well, I think part of it is just it gets me really engaged with what's in front of me, with the environment. I feel it sounds super cliche, but I feel so much more connected with the outdoors, with the wilderness, if I pause, take the camera out of the bag, and start to arrange it in some way that is pleasing to the eye, or try to achieve a certain effect, and try to tell a certain story based on what's in front of me, as opposed to walking past everything all the time and not really and quickly moving on to the next thing. So I think that's a big part of it, is just I feel way more at one. I feel more engaged. I feel way more I feel like I'm a way better observer. And so I don't need the most epic sunset anymore to be interested when I'm out there, and to stop me in my tracks. I have things that 10 years ago I would have probably just walked right past them, and I'm sure you can relate to that. And now, because I'm looking at things more through a photographer's eyes, I notice those little things that I may not have noticed in the past, and they do amaze me, even though they may not be the nicest looking, the huge, sunlit mountain or the rainbow or whatever. You realize that there is truly beauty in so many things out there, and I'm thankful to. I think I owe a lot of that to photography, making me a much better observer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like, I actually that was like it was really funny. I used to be just those person who go to the to the point of interest and capture that nice photo that everyone else have, until my friend was pointed out, like I was traveling with my friend at the time, and I was taking photo for like an hour at a time, and then she would be there just like just observing, and then I was like, sorry, like I'll quickly hurry up, and she just says like, no, 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 I actually enjoy, like like the more you sit there, the more you enjoy it, the more you see. Do you feel that as well, like like the deeper the longer, like the slower you travel, and then the longer you're in that place and observing, it feels like almost feel like you can see more. Is that part of the experience that you're feeling there?
I would say so for sure. I think there's no doubt that there's a direct relationship between the ability to see and the ability to slow down your process. I and I'm still guilty of that many times. I'll just go out there and operate in like turbo mode, and I, instead of actually taking the time to slow down my process and take more time to immerse and walk around and look at what's available, and just get a feel for the place. And it's something that yeah, again, I'm still guilty of, but I've come a long way, and it's something that I spend a lot of effort and time in workshop environments, is trying to get people to slow down and trying to get them to pause and leave the camera in the bag for a little bit longer before they start to tell stories with it. That's it's always an uphill battle, I think, for all outdoor photographer. We just react to the stimuli so quickly, and we're just so excited, and we want to engage with the environment as as quickly as possible, and as a result we don't really ever engage. We sort of hop around a little bit too much perhaps. So I think for me, and I've seen just a direct relationship to with regards to the quality of my work. I find that when I take my time and I slow down and I commit a lot of time to on average to an image, I tend to get images that stand the test of time for me, as opposed to a whole bunch of forgettable images that, yeah, may or may not look like all the other images that have been done before that particular location.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I feel like um when you go to a certain place, and I guess it might be maybe because we're living the social media era where we get so exposed to all those point of view. So when we get there, we straight away look at that point of view and just try to capture it. And like you say, like when I go to the popular places here, like in Wanka and Vermilion Lake, I do exactly that. I just go like take the popular view, and then I was like, okay, maybe I should look into it deeper. So that is really great that you share that. But like in terms of your photo is like out there. It's like it's one that's really unique, even compared to those top class photographers. Yours is just, if you see your photo, it's Paul Zizka's photo, right? So what really inspired you to get those kind of photo, and how does that creative mind works to capture and create that masterpiece?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words, Stanley. I think there's still so much of what I shoot that unfortunately is still very much just microwaved versions of the same ideas, and it all starts to look the same, and I'm still guilty of that. And I have to say, I fight the battle a little harder as every year goes by, and I try to fight that urge of just recreating the things that now I can do fairly quickly, efficiently, and that will get a strong online response. But really deep inside, I know that they don't do much for me as a photographer. So the reason that I sort of started chasing different types of images that I was used to out there, and part of it is just I got tired of just creating the same thing all the time. It doesn't have anything to do with what other people are or are not doing. Even if you make abstraction of all that and you forget whether or not an image has been done a million times or not, as a photographer, eventually the only sustainable way to do photography, it's not sustainable to go and recreate the same thing. It is for 6 months, but not for 10 years. At some point, you just hit the wall. It takes the fun out of it. You don't feel that rush that you get when you create something that to you is fresh and exciting. You got to find a ways to keep things exciting as a photographer. And I'm sure you're the same. Where there's types of images that you can go out there and create in 30 seconds with your eyes closed, and they're going to be well composed, they're going to be well liked, they're going to be popular, and you can execute 10 of them in one morning. And that's not me saying like blowing my own horn. That's just saying that every photographer is drawn to something that is drawn to within a fairly short time frame within any field of photography, will be able to execute certain types of images very, very quickly and easily. It may be the wide, epic, sweeping landscape. It may be the intimate scene. It may be black and white, whatever it is. But 1 year into it, once you have piles of those images, some of which you really like, eventually you want to push beyond that. You want to do something a little bit different. And so that's partly why I started to play around with it. I don't know, for example, the human element a little bit more, just got out at night a little bit more. And I think that's a huge reason why for me, and I think you'll relate to that, for me, I've been really trying hard to put exploration ahead of photography, because if I keep exploration ahead of photography, then right away I eliminate that potential of just ending up at the location that I've seen in similar like conditions before and recreating the exact same thing that I've done before. I think one way that I would recommend, that's a great way to just keep innovating as a photographer, is just put different scenes in front of you. It makes so much sense, but it's and in where we live, it's super easy to do, right? And that's not me saying don't, oh, I never shoot Vermilion Lakes, I never shoot Bow Lake, because I've, that like everything's been, those places are absolutely beautiful. And yes, you can totally go there and get images that are fresh and that have never done before, fresh to you and fresh to the photo community. But if you go somewhere entirely new, well, you're not going to recreate something exactly that's very close to what you've done before, and you have a fresh canvas. And I think that's a wonderful way to keep things fresh and exciting, is to just put in that little extra work to place yourself in front of a brand new scene that is new and exciting, and suddenly nothing's been done. And so that's one ingredient that I've been really trying to chase in my work over the last few years. Given the choice between going back somewhere familiar, going somewhere new, I'll always go somewhere new. I just love to fill in the blanks on the map.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Actually, I'm pretty sure the listener can get a lot of inspiration from that, because I think like a lot of the times we're really drawn into that iconic place, and like you do this really well, because you've been here for such a long time, but all your photos is almost never the same. Like, you look at it, it's like I've seen so many shots of Paul Zizka take photo of Vermilion, but when you see a new post of yours, it'd be like, wow, how do you just come out with that? Like, it's like you just come out with something different. So I think it's really important that a lot of photographers out there, especially those who like just started, recognize that photography is more like a process and an art. Like more like how to get there and expressing yourself instead of just taking that photo that everyone kind of likes. So I'm really glad that you kind of mentioned that.
And I appreciate that, Stanley. I think I just want to add one more thing to that. I think,
Yeah.
I have the shots, the classic shots, right? Like, it's not like I don't take them. I don't want to sound pretentious. I have them. And I used to only shoot that when I go to locations. And now what I tell people, whether it's fellow photographers or people at workshops, is why not get both? Get the shot that you've seen online a million times. That's okay. Emulation is a huge part of getting becoming a better photographer. Is just there's nothing wrong with trying to recreate an image that you've seen online. You learn the techniques, you deconstruct it, and you figure out why the composition makes sense. Get that shot, but then stick it out and show us how you truly see the place. Challenge yourself to come up with something that not for Instagram. Challenge yourself to come up with a shot that you're going to look at 5 years from now and say, wow, I can't believe this was Vermilion Lakes. That's so cool. That's such a different take, and that's so much more like me. And I think that's when you see a body of work, a unique body of work emerge in certain photographers, right? In when they force themselves to not only take the shot that's perhaps is more considered iconic, or the trophy shot, or whatever you want to call it, but they'll stick it out and try to get something that's maybe a little bit different for themselves, because they need to push a little bit beyond what comes easily to them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, part of my workflow now, especially when I come to this popular place, I always, I look at Instagram as an inspiration now, instead of, the things to go and shoot. So I would go Instagram, look at some of these nice places, some of these nice point of view. And you're right, I would take that iconic shot first. But because you've seen it before, that will take you, like, like you said, the 30 seconds or whatever. But, and, don't stop there. Like, keep going and spend the rest of your time there looking deeper and looking differently. So yeah, that's such a great advice there. Yeah, thanks a lot for adding that. I'm sure, like, especially for those of you who kind of just started, it took me about 7 months, when I started doing photography full time, when I realized this. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it is such an important process, I think, in photography.
Yeah, and it took me a lot longer than it did for you, Stanley. And honestly,
really?
I look at pretty much anything I shot before 2015, and there's not much, at least
Oh.
2013, and there's not much that stands the test of time for me. And part of it was that that was a big period of emulation, and once in a while I got a little bit lucky with the conditions, and I have some images that I have those images that might be like a fiery wide sunrise from somewhere, and it's beautiful to look at, but it doesn't feel like mine. It doesn't feel like it doesn't have my imprint on it, if you will. Like, I feel a little bit disconnected from it now. And yes, I could, and occasionally I will put those images out there, but I think it's nice, I think as photographers, when you can offer something, contribute something fresh to the community, even though it's an image that may not get a lot of online attention, do it, because I think that's what people need to see, even though they might not know it. If you go to a place and you get this very unusual scene from those locations that are considered overshot, put it out there. We need more of this, right? We need more of this in the community. And I think, so I think, consider that as you put your work out there. It's like, the bottom line is, do you really like the image? Are you proud of it? If you are, put it out there. Who cares what other people think? But I think in the long run, if you can offer something fresh to the community, I would say if you shot an image because to you it felt like you noticed something at Vermilion Lakes or Bow Lake that you never noticed before, and you're excited to create a story around it, well, you're probably going to be excited to introduce other people to that story as well. And I think it's just so refreshing to see imagery out there that is a blend. You have, it's a beautiful sunrise. Sure, let the world appreciate it. We all love the pinks and oranges and the purples. That's great. But then also, it's nice to see a mix of that and maybe the more intimate landscapes, or the weirder, like, out of the box kind of compositions. I think it's, unfortunately, with social media, I think things are heavily tilted towards, the more formulaic, I guess, images, the images that will appeal to the public as a whole. And less so you see images that, without sounding pretentious, hopefully, images that offer something new to the community, something that at least your fellow photographers will look at the image and be like, holy smokes, I've never seen this take on Lake Louise. That is so cool. And then it opens your mind as a fellow photographer. When next time you go out there, you might act consciously or not, you might actively sort of try to seek out those different angles, that fresh perspective on places.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely. That is. I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's really good advice. Like if you like, how, you know, what was your inspiration to create this like unique photos? I know you talk about exploration out there, but your photos kind of not only have uniqueness into it, but a lot of different perspective to it, right? So do you have like an inspiration, or is there anything that the listeners can kind of do to create that inspiration? Because like you say, I think creativity doesn't always come straight away, and I think that's where a lot of people have that misconception for photographer. Like you have the eye for it, that it was as if you were born with it. I had to learn that myself, and the way I learned it was just I take 300 photos of the same scene, like literally. I would just go like, yeah, it's like, okay, that one is better. But that's how I learned composition. From your perspective itself, what is your inspiration, and what can help the audience out there in terms of sparking that new and creative ideas?
Great question, Stanley. I would say part of it is two things I haven't really touched on as much. One of them is just, I mean, it's related to exploration. I just feel a rush when I get to a place that I've never seen before. I feel like I get in touch with my inner 5-year-old again, and I feel all exciting, and I'm buzzing. And I see that in the people I'm getting out with too. I see them transform into little kids. They're so fired up to enter a new valley or see a new lake or reach a new summit. It's so exciting. But part of it is just even going back, getting a fresh perspective on the places you're familiar with can be just as exciting. And you don't need to go uphill for 3 hours to get that fresh perspective. And that's what I try to encourage people at, especially in workshop environments. It's amazing how much moving your feet for 10-15 minutes will open up your mind creatively. It will open up so many opportunities. So it's just a matter of sort of not settling for the first thing that you see when you get there. No matter how excited you are, commit to keeping the camera in the bag for half an hour before you start to tell the story that you like best. Out of everything that you see, go for a walk, go make a visual inventory of everything that's available, and don't commit to something until you're hugely excited about it. I think a lot of people, and I see that in workshops all the time, and I'm guilty of it too, a lot of people will commit way too much time to an image that really, when they think about it deep down, they were never that excited about the possibility. And then you end up with an image that's a little bit forgettable, and that you'll have, will sort of end up on a hard drive a week later for the rest of your life, and you'll never see the light of day again. So I think, I try to encourage people to look for the extraordinary, set the bar really high in terms of what you want to tell the story of, and then commit the time. Like, commit a lot of time. It's okay to spend half an hour or an hour on one image, but you're only going to want to do that if the excitement level is through the roof. Otherwise, you're going to lose interest. So that's one big thing that I think really can get people to really can drive people to get different, take their body of work in a different direction. The other thing I want to bring up is just, I think, from a straight up, for people who want to do photography as a business, whether it's a side income or full time, well, the bottom line is, if you offer the same product as everyone else, the only way you're going to make it in business is if you scream louder than everyone else. And you're going to have to be you're gonna need huge numbers on social. You're gonna need to maybe sound a bit desperate at times. You're gonna need to like push your products endlessly. You're gonna need to scream louder than everybody else who has the similar shots. And so for me, a much better avenue would be, well, let's give up on that. Let's create images that are more aligned with your own personality, your own view of the world. And then you're way more likely 5 or 10 years down the road to have developed a body of work that people will notice without you having to be super vocal about it all the time. So I think, if you're starting to today in landscape outdoor photography, you have two choices. You can chase the numbers, and you know the recipe to do that. But I guarantee you're going to have to do a lot of screaming over the next few years to be heard. Or you can immediately give up on the numbers, chase images that you really like just purely for the chase, not so much for the results. Focus on your process and be patient with numbers, and the right people will notice. And eventually, 10 years down the road, in comparison, you'll end up with a body of work that stands out a lot more. And you're not going to have to be as addicted potentially to the online reaction. You're not going to have to play the game and be part of that circus nearly as much. And I think it's unfortunate that so many photographers who are just starting these days feel like they have to play the game. You don't have to play the game. You don't have to build a following as rapidly as you can and disregard the types of image that you shoot and put the numbers, the online stats first. You don't have to. There is another way, but it's definitely an uphill battle trying to get people to see that, because of course, in the first year or two of your business, you're not going to see the same return on investment potentially, but you have to play the long game. I think that's the only way to make things sustainable in photography, and 10 years down the road end up with a body of work that people will notice, and people might look at an image and say, I knew it was your image even before I saw your name attached to it. I just knew it. And that's not true for all the images, but that's more likely to happen 10 years down the road.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. I think you know um, there was a student when I was teaching in Lake Louise who's like, he say one thing to me, and which really inspires me. Basically, he say, like I was there, and then we had like a short workshop, and I was like, okay, let's go to the next spot, and let's get this other good spot. And it's like, no, I'm happy with this. Like if I can get one good shot from this trip, I would be happy. And I think that was such an inspiration for myself, because I am that kind of person where I just like, I'm trying to get everything at once. And at times by doing that, you gonna miss the more intimate part of it. So yeah, it's really good. I think one of the thing that a lot of our listener might be struggling with is time. You might say it's like, okay, go out there and take your time and grab this photo and explore more. But they might have work and they have a family, and I know you yourself are have a lot on your plate, which it's always amazed me how you still find time to go out there and explore new places. So what advice have you got for the listeners who feel like they don't have the time to go out there and explore the outdoors?
I'm so glad you brought up that point, Stanley, because for me, it's the main struggle with my photo business. It's just the balance is really, really tricky. It's a delicate dance, and some weeks we do really, really good at it, and some weeks we drop, we drop a few balls in that juggling act, and some things fall through the cracks. I'll be honest with you. managing two young children. um, we're both my wife and I, we try to sort of follow our passions in a way, as a way to make a living. So my wife's a writer, and so yeah, and then we want to try to keep doing what we love, what we did before we had kids. To a certain extent, we, we still have that passion for the outdoors, and we're both, I would say, I would say it's fair to say we're perfectionists. We have fairly high standards in terms of what we want to create out there, and we realize that good writing and good photography takes time, and so all that makes it tricky to fit in everything in 24 hours, and then also the need to just stay healthy to hopefully be able to do this in another 10 years and another 10 years. And so that's another thing to keep in mind. I'm not proud of my average night's sleep, for example. But that time I've got to get it somewhere right now. And right now, we're working on it. But I only have 24 hours like everybody else. I want to be present for my kids. I want to see them grow up. I want to spend quality time with my wife. I want to spend time with friends. I mean, it's so many priorities to juggle. I would say the main things that I've learned that work for us, that's not necessarily for everybody, but for us, it's been hugely important to carve out blocks of time for certain priorities and be very, very strict about not touching them. So we get together at the beginning of the week and we make sure that Meg gets her creative time, Meg gets her outdoor time, I get my creative time, I get my outdoor time. We get our time as a family, the four of us. Meg and I get our time together. And like I said, some weeks we manage it beautifully. It's truly an art. And some weeks not so well, because honestly, we don't have much of a buffer. If any sort of curveball gets thrown at us, like this week, we had our little one. We had to keep our little one at home the first 2 days of the week because she had a runny nose, which, because we don't have a buffer, then it throws a wrench into everything, and it's going to be a week that by the end of it is going to be, not it won't be as well managed as some other weeks. So it's tricky, but if you carve out those blocks of time, I think that really, really helps. And I think another thing is I don't have a lot of field time, but when I'm out there, I'm forced to make it count. Not in the sense that I'll try to hit 20 locations in one day, like we talked about, but when I'm out in the field, I found that because my time in the field is cut short, I'm way more intentional about everything that I do. I don't cut corners. I compose. I compose. I'm a bit more picky about composition, exposing properly, getting all the images that I need. Whereas before I had the luxury of time, so I was a bit more sloppy in the field. There's no doubt about it. But now I'm a lot more driven. I'm a guy on a mission. I operate with a lot more purpose. And of course, I think there's some things that people can do that will just, all the techie stuff, all the math, settings, how to knowing your gear very well, all those things that you can do that won't bog you down in the field and will give you that precious hour in a day, those things add up. You can spend a whole day in the field fighting with your tripods, wondering about the exposure triangle, and then that's going to cut down on your field time about an hour or 2 hours, because perhaps you're not working with intention. You're all over the place. I think that I've been forced to be very intentional about how I operate in the field, because I have so little field time these days and I have to make it work. So those are the two things that come to mind immediately when it comes to balance: is purposely blocking off chunks of time throughout the week so everybody gets what they need. And then when you do get that precious field time, make it count by being organized and working with a lot of purpose and intention.
There's two things about that I want to just comment on that note there. First of all, it is such an inspiration for for myself, but I'm sure for many of the listeners, that you both are chasing your passion. You know, I become an engineer because it was the safe way to do it, and then I finally got out of it because I realized there was more to life. But it was just so inspiring to hear that, like, even though things has progressed further, and you got busier, you never stop chasing your passion. I think that's something that our listeners should do a little bit more. And the other thing about that is, like, do the things that you love. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're only gonna do this a part-time, as an amateur, as a hobby, or you want to do it full-time. Yes, Paul say it all the time, like, you might have to do the things that you don't like, but don't forget that to have fun for yourself as well. And I think that 2 point there is just very, very important, because for myself, I was very close to burning out, because you're right, I was shooting for someone else. I was shooting for the Instagram likes and the Facebook. And after a while, I was like, it's I'm not enjoying this anymore. I'm just like going out there, taking a photo, and then go back home. There is no really like enjoyment of process. So um and I think I'll mention one last thing, is that thanks a lot for showing us the inside behind the scene, because um for many of us, I think we want to get there. We want to take more photos. We want to get out more, but we have these things like, oh, but I should do this, I should do that, and we then come up with a bunch of excuses, or a bunch of things that false belief, I suppose, that give us a perception that we don't have the time to shoot. So, if you can do it, I'm sure many of you can do it as well.
Yeah, I think it's easy to find excuses, no matter the situation you're in. And there are often a thought that will often come to me, Stanley, is like, I don't honestly, now that I have kids, and I've had kids for 7 years, I don't really remember what it was like before. It's weird. It's like, yeah, but part of me is always like, and I really got after, before I had kids, I was out there a lot, but there's always part of me that's like, holy smokes, if I was ever without kids, I would be out there like crazy. So if you have the luxury of time, you owe it to the rest. Just get out there. Don't make excuses, because you might wish one day that you would have been out there a lot more. So get out there, and even if it's cold and whatever, and you're half excited, get out there anyways. And I should add to, Stanley, because just to paint, I think, an accurate picture of our situation. There's 4 of us at Paul Zizka Photography, right? Like, it's not a one-man show. And so a lot, we referred to the parts of the business that maybe are a little bit, or not field time, or a bit less glamorous, or perhaps I enjoy them less. Like, we have 4 people: myself, my wife Meg, Danielle, and Trixie. And that amounts to probably 3 people full-time working at PZP, as we call it. So it's not like I'm doing all that stuff. So we've got someone on social media, we got someone handling prints, books, inquiries, keywording, even some of the editing, some of the commercial projects. Like, there's a lot of people involved. But again, I think maybe that can be a third tip for people who wanting to achieve balance, is get some help. And you don't need to wait until you have 30 hours of work to outsource. If you have 3 hours of things that are preventing you from going in the field, and you can afford to pay someone to do those things, to do those tasks, and perhaps also that person is much better at that stuff than you are, and perhaps they enjoy it more as well. I mean, it makes so much sense. I think a lot of people wait way too long. They wait until they haven't been out in the field for 2 months before they start outsourcing work to someone else. And so that's been a real big game changer for us, to have someone handling a lot of those background tasks, for sure. And I'll tell you honestly, almost everything that I outsource, Meg, Trixie, and Danielle are much better at those things than I am. So it works out really, really well. And I can do what only I can do for the team, which is capture and edit the images, right? And a lot of the tasks that in a way other people could do, then why not outsource them? If you can afford to set aside $100 a week to pay someone to do something so that you can get, those 3-4 hours back in the field, then it makes a lot of sense. So something to consider for people out there who are trying to do photography as a side income.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that whole thing about focus on the things that you're good at, and the things that you like is, very important. Because at the end of the day, if you don't like it, first of all, you're not gonna do a good job at it, and second of all, you're just gonna burn out because you start doing things that you don't like. So, yeah, that's a great advice, Paul, especially for those of you who want to take your photography more, further to business side of things. So it's definitely something that I kind of learned is that, a good example that I could use was the website. I tried for so long trying to save money on creating a website where I could have just spent the money, bite the bullet, and probably would get a better return and a faster return by doing that. So, like if it's really, I think if you're sure about it, go for it. Yeah. So that was a great advice. Look, Paul, thanks a lot. Like, we're coming to the hour mark. So, I know you're very busy. I'm just gonna ask you one more question here. For the people who kind of just started and they might be like looking at people like you and look at the photos, and they might not have that confidence and self-belief that they can make it. Maybe they feel like people like you have that, the talent, or you are a prodigy, and in some sort that that they will never make it there. What advice do you have for them? And maybe if you were to go back to their shoe, how you would have tell yourself back 20-30 years back to to get to where you are right now, in a nutshell?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good question once again, Stanley. I think what would I tell myself? When I started photography, I started going full time almost overnight in 2009 or so. I dropped everything and decided to go for it. I think as much as I was very lucky with my trajectory, in the sense that within a year, within the first year, things went well. Some things fell on my lap. Some things were the result of hard work. But I never had to go back to other types of work, and I didn't have to be on the fence for at all, really. I just jumped right into it. But I would say it's going to go back to some of what we said, where just try to remember why you got into it in the first place. When you get overwhelmed and you realize that there's that voice inside you telling you you're doing it for the wrong reasons, slow things down. Just halt things completely and think about, okay, how do I fix the trajectory that I'm on? If you feel like you're in a position where it sounds like you've been to, where you're purely creating for the masses and it's not a personal endeavor anymore, then it's time to readjust the target, right? And I think that's such an easy, especially in these days with social media and all that, it's such an easy trap to fall into as photographers. So it's an ongoing battle. You're always battling that desire to please the public and all that, and you always have that the little angel, the little demon on the two shoulders, and it's like, oh, am I pressing the shutter 100% for myself or 100% for the public, or is it somewhere halfway in there on the spectrum? But bottom line is, I think there always has to be that consistency of creating for yourself. It's a cliche, but it has to be there throughout to some extent for things to work out. So I would tell people, just whenever you feel like, don't try not to lose sight of what got you excited about photography in the first place. And chances are it's not because you wanted to be popular. you probably left that at high school. It was another reason that got you into photography in the first place. And I think another thing I would tell myself is just try not to be too scattered. Try not to do it all. It's very tempting, especially when you start. You want to say yes to absolutely everybody who comes knocking. And I did that for a few years, and I ended up just feeling so scattered and doing a lot of things, um, you know, okay, but not really becoming really good at one thing. So my advice to anybody starting, and that's true from a business perspective as well as for people who don't have no interest in making money out of their image, is just just focus on one or two fields or one or two streams of revenue, and really get after it. Be, put all your effort into those things until you feel like you handle them really well and they're well-oiled machines, and then go on and tackle something else. And then, by all means, then for us it's been crucial through COVID and stuff, then diversify. So many photographers have their eggs in one basket, and I would say I never want to be in that position. It's way too volatile an industry to have all your eggs in one basket. So I would recommend start with a couple streams of income. When you feel like your ROI is really good and you're doing those things with your eyes closed and they're really well-oiled machines, then maybe once a year add one stream of income, one stream of revenue. And 10 years down the road, you find yourself in a situation where it's okay if two or three streams of revenue just tank, because you've got those other five that are going okay, that are making up for it, and you're not losing sleep over it. I think diversifying the way that you do photography will be the way to go in the foreseeable future, because that makes it such an exciting time to do photography, especially people who want to do photography as a side income or full-time job. Is there's just so many ways to make it work in 2020, so many different ways. And I keep seeing photographers come up with new creative ways to generate income, especially COVID's been amazing for that. And so I think I think it's a good thing that we have just so many ways that we can make it work as photographers without having to commit to one stream of income and then just bank everything on that. So that would be my other advice to myself, would be just don't be too scattered at the beginning, and then just gradually add the other items as you start to figure out that you manage the rest really, really well, and you got a good handle on things.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's not only applied to business, also with photography. I think, if you could, especially for those of you kind of just start, I think if you could focus on one skill instead of trying to do a whole lot of things, I think you will get there a lot faster. Multitasking is not a thing. It's what people say, but it actually doesn't work. So yeah, that's a great advice. Both for photography and also for business side. Um, well, thanks a lot, Paul. Like, it's been amazing, and the inspiration and the story that you shared today here, I'm sure is gonna be an inspiration to the listeners, and hopefully push the listeners to go out there. I know you've managed a lot of Facebook groups, and I follow a lot of your Facebook groups. Every single one of them always inspires people to get out there, and it's one of the reason why I want you to be here. But look, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners too. Where can we find you? Where can the listener find you, for those of you who want to learn a little bit more about yourself and what you do, and also some of your stunning photos?
Thanks, Stanley. I'm easy to find online. I'm at Paul Zizka Photography. Pretty much, every Paul Zizka Photography on Facebook. The website is zizka.ca, zizka.ca. That's where all the workshops are listed, the books, the print information. I've got business course on there. We talked a lot about business. A few different courses on there. So everything is on the website. What I consider to be my best work from over the years, my favorite images are on there as well. You can also follow lots of people like Instagram, Twitter. I'm at Paul Zizka Photo on there, so I'd love to interact with you on there. And yeah, otherwise, I'm easy to find, easy to reach via email. If anybody has questions, I do my very best to get back to everyone. And so yeah, drop me a line if you feel I can assist with anything. And yeah, it's been an amazing discussion, Stanley. I think we touched on a lot of great, important topics. Given we just had an hour to work with, I think we covered a lot of ground. And yeah, I'm very thankful for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure, and I appreciate all the thoughtful questions.
Ah, that's great. Yeah, look, it was definitely a really good conversation. You know, not only the listeners, I was learning a lot from that. So thank you for your wisdom and also your knowledge there. But yeah, look, thanks a lot, Wiki Hunters, and we're gonna wrap this up. I'm sure Paul's just gonna have a lot of other things. And take care of his children and also his business side of things, and also go out there and shoot more so that you could be more inspired. But thanks a lot for tuning in, for listening in. And yeah, look, don't forget to subscribe and check out Paul Zizka's link, and I will put the link to all the links on the comment. So if you can't find it on the website, which I highly don't, I highly doubt it, all you have to do is just type in Paul Zizka, it'll be everywhere, but it will be there for you. So thanks a lot for tuning in, Wiki Hunters, and I'll see you guys next week.